classes you took when you were younger, the class you're currently taking, the time you had with the coach, the prep you did for your audition, everything had to go right in the time, and then the role had to be written just so for you. All these things, it's very kismet when you book, and I think that shouldn't be overshadowed.
Welcome to Get Scene Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. We are going to dive into acting insights, meet industry pros, and master the business. Don't forget to subscribe and share. We're keeping you behind the scenes and ahead of the game. As you know, this episode is brought to you by Get Scene Studios, and we want to invite you to one of our challenges that we love to start the new year with. It is called the Booked It Challenge. It's only $28. It starts on February 5th. It's 4 weeks, everyone. And each week we go over specific strategy to help you get more auditions. Then we give you specific tactics to implement into your auditions to help your auditions stand out in a big way. And then we also bring in a casting director to look over auditions so we can learn from those industry pros. So everyone, this is an incredible challenge to help you grow in a big way and also really give you momentum to have the best acting year of your journey. So we can't wait to help you do that. You can also save $5 by using the promo code unscripted. So everyone, it's already $28. Make it even cheaper and more affordable than that. So be sure to sign up, everyone, for our Booked It Challenge starting on February 5th. Now enjoy the show. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Get Scene Unscripted. I'm really excited for today's guest. He was an agent turned casting director. Not only casting director, everyone, but Emmy Award-winning casting director from Feldstein, Paris. We got Mr. Chase Paris in the house. What's up, man?
Hi, thanks for having me, man.
I'm so excited for you to be here. And like I said, I spilled the beans on anyone that doesn't know that you've won an Emmy. And I want to immediately dive into that. Can you please run me down that memory lane? That must have been insanity.
Oh, man. The funny thing about that day is we were nominated for 2 shows, Stranger Things and Atlanta. And at the time, we thought people were going to beat us for Stranger Things, but we felt really good about Atlanta. And it was the first award that was announced. I'm pretty sure it was Tom Hanks that was giving it away. And I was like, oh, I'm about to go meet Tom Hanks. And then we didn't win it. And so I was like, well, I guess we're just going to sit here for the next 2 hours and wait. Because back then they didn't do the awards back to back. I don't know why. So an hour and a half goes by. And we're just sitting there kind of fidgeting and they start going through the nominations. So we sit up. We don't think anything's going to happen. And when they called our name after it all, I remember almost like being out of body. I just stood up and kind of turned and kissed my wife. And we just kind of floated to the side. And all I could think was they had these reflective stairs. And I'm like, don't fall. I was staring at my feet.
Yeah.
And the rest of the day was just almost giggling. It was a very surreal experience overall. The being up on stage kind of was a blur. We did a little blurb in the back afterwards and then had a bunch of press. But that individual moment, I'm a very flighty person, but I can probably take you through the surrealness of it. Just like I just did over and over. It was a crazy moment.
How do you think that shaped kind of your casting journey? Were you now we're at a certain level, or because I feel like it could take you a couple different directions. One being we need to get on the humble train, maybe, So I feel like it could be incredible, but even potentially disastrous.
It happened. See, that was 2018, I believe, and so that's about halfway through to where we are now.
Yeah.
And it took us a couple years to get traction and people who we were trying hard to work with, who work with us all the time now, not returning emails or phone calls. And I think by that point we had turned a corner. We were one of the first calls people make in town, at least inquiring about a veil, or, we knew we were in the running for most things. And I think I would like to say that kind of put us over the top, but I think that had already kind of happened. What it did, though, is it gave us a much more credibility. So now when we were talking about casting with our creatives, it's almost like they picked up and listened a little more. They took us on our word. They trusted our vision and creative side of things more. Whereas when we were first starting, it was just, I hope you like everybody, and then letting them kind of drive the ship. And I think And that still happens every once in a while. You have someone who's really involved in casting, a producer or director who really want to be involved and want to make that their focus. But ever since that Emmy, I would say it's been much more that they will defer to us, or they will make it our job to actually cast a role, and our recommendation holds a lot more weight. So as far as making us, I will say probably better collaborators and artists, but definitely more present. And you can see more of what we put on the screen since then because we were let more into the process. We were allowed to show more of what we provide to the art of it all. And that had happened a little bit beforehand, but I think it either because both because of how we were perceived, but also how we presented ourselves and how we approached projects. It allowed us to take more stock in us being actual casting directors and being authorities, especially for the Southeast market.
Yeah, well, kind of similarly, right? For an actor that doesn't have a resume yet and then does have a resume with shows that people know, you're like, okay, I can trust this actor more with a bigger role or what have you. Kind of similar with producers, casting to producers, right?
Absolutely. Especially because, they're more, and it's different now maybe by a degree, but back then, up until maybe 2018, 2019, people were coming to town not very familiar with the talent pool, and they would trust us because they would know us, but they would trust us to be the experts on the talent pool. When they're in LA and New York, most directors, especially on episodic television, they have a list of people they've worked with before or they're familiar with, and this isn't like A-list. It's like, journeyman, middle ground, guest star actors who make a good living that you see all the time, but maybe you don't know their name immediately, but they're in everything kind of thing. When they work in those markets, they know who they want to kind of see. And this goes down to day players at times. Here, they weren't as familiar. Everyone was new to them. It's why I used to, when I would do Q&As or I would counsel actors, I'm like, if you've been acting for 30 years and you don't have a reel that shows what you've done, you are, to some people, equal to someone who's getting their first audition because you're going through this. They're as familiar with you as they are that person. That's changed a little bit recently, and we are able to explain to them this is a more experienced person. This is, someone who is a preeminent in our market. Sometimes they actually know them now. There's several that are like that, just because the market's taken off so much, and that's kind of coincided with our success. So it's actually helped us. We've been able to help actors with our experience level with the talent pool and explaining to our producers and directors who they are, but also the actors have helped us because they've been elevated and working other markets and working bigger roles and having the ability to book things that are now visible to other creatives that come in. So that's the main thing that we are tasked with doing. It's why we don't always work in other markets. If I were to go try and jump into LA or New York, it would be a learning curve just to get familiar with the talent. Well, it's the same reason why they need to hire us locally, is because if you were to have an LA or New York casting director to come in and really know the talent pool down here and cast something efficiently and well, that you can't do that. And so that's the value that we usually bring, not only to the production, but to the talent pool itself.
Yeah, I want to go back to talking about how the directors sometimes in other markets, they're like, I kind of already have a list of people that I know I want to see, right? And they're going to bring that to the casting. And as our market is evolving, right, I feel like the question just is always echoing, right? Oh, but we don't get big roles, blah, 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 right? It's actors always kind of in that complaint. And it's like, it takes time for like that type of thing to happen. And I feel like that's such a good point that you just don't see it because you're not behind the scenes, right? You don't know that the directors are kind of having their list and then they're coming here and they're like, well, I don't really know anyone. Maybe I should just go with the guy that I know back in New York or LA. And like, how often does that happen that like we don't know about?
Well, that's the funny thing about casting. And you mentioned me being an agent before. The most eye-opening thing is having been on both sides of it and seeing what the perspective is, not only on the agent side, but the actor side and what they think, and actually seeing how the sausage is made, basically. You run the gamut of guys that come in. And it's less so now than it was in the past. It used to be everyone was scared of local talent. Someone had hurt them in the past or they couldn't make their day, and they would rather fly someone in for even small roles just to make sure that they got the performance they wanted. They didn't trust the talent pool here at all. And you occasionally get someone who really has either an explicit or implied bias against local talent. That's just them. You have the opposite. I remember we did the founder with John Lee Hancock. And that guy was so great in the casting room. And we cast so many big roles in that project. And it dawned on me with that project that sometimes a director is just so good and so confident in their abilities that they don't care where the actor comes from. They're going to get their top, call sheet people because they have value to the production that's outside of talent. But they're more willing to give big roles to locals, to anyone really that they can find, because they know they can get a performance out of them. Donald Glover, I think, was great about that on Atlanta, and Hero, and all those guys that were on that, because they took guys who didn't have a lot of acting experience, but they were Atlanta. I mean, they were Atlanta guys, and they got great performances out of them, to the point where we hired someone, and I remember watching them in the season. I'm like, man, I've been sleeping on this actor. I don't know why we haven't hired him more. And then I went to hire him. I went to go audition for a few of the things. I was like, oh, we got to get this guy in more. No, he was right for that role. He was great with that director. He was good. He was good. And he's, a lot of these actors have grown more since then. But it just shows the talent some directors can have to pull out a performance of someone that makes them real. And then there's everything in between. You have, we did a couple projects with Mike Flanagan. He's The Fall of the House of Usher and Haunting of Hill House and Dr. Sleep. And he, like to use some of the same guys over and over again. James Gunn is another one who has guys he really loves to work with. And when you make that kind of impression, it doesn't matter where you are. If they trust you, they're going to make it work. And you just got to, I try and tell actors, you don't want to be overbearing, right? And you don't want to be annoying, but you kind of got to approach the line, because the opposite of that is not just waiting to be noticed. Like, you still need to network on set. You still need to do, it's not just doing a good job and hoping they notice. Like, making sure like it's collaborative in the moment, making sure you can know where you can make connections, because you never know when the next job's going to be. We've had a guy work with the same director a couple times, and he just had a fairly small role the first time, but he's now done 4 projects with him, and every time he comes to town, he's like, I want to work with this guy every time. And I don't know if they've ever hung out outside of just being on set, or if they just really enjoy working together. But those connections happen more than, and it happens to us a lot too. When I have to hire, we get the nepotism question about, oh, we're hiring so-and-so's sister or so-and-so's cousin or nephew. And yes, this does happen. But more than not, it's someone who's worked with someone who has really enjoyed working with them, and they hire. And everyone thinks, oh, they're hiring their friend. Well, maybe they're friendly, but they're hiring someone they trust as an artist to do their job. They're not going to sacrifice their project.
Right. There's a lot of money at sacrifice.
There's a lot of money at stake. So you look, not everyone's going to, you may never reach that state, but you also got to realize that we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to make connections. And if you can somehow, even if you're not the person they call by name the next time they come to town, but you just make Atlanta or the Southeast look that much better, then they're going to slowly gain more trust to cast the bigger role here, the next role here, the next project. They'll allot more of the cast to be local. It's something that we've been gaining momentum on, and we just need to make sure it continues to be our focus if we want to take the next step.
You mentioned like you got to kind of be out there a little bit more, like go network. And, to take this a step further, on Candy's last booking, and my last booking too, actually, we both set an intention. We're going on set, and I'm setting this intention to do X, Y, Z. And Candy's was, I'm the role of the bank teller, and I'm going to get brought back. She was like, that's my intention. I don't know how it's possible to get brought back as this bank teller, but I'm going to get brought back. And so she went in with that intention, just so because of that though, right? She talked to everybody a little bit differently, I bet. She connected with them a little bit. The guy that she was acting opposite was also the showrunner of the show. And then what ended up happening is the producers of the show called Candy's agent and was like, will you send us her materials? We love her, and we want to share her with all of our producer friends because she needs to be in more stuff. It was crazy, but it was like, I don't think that would have happened without the intention. Right. Yeah. And so it's more than just like, I'm going to go on set and I'm going to do a good job and I'm going to I don't want to get in anyone's way and I just want to say my lines. It's like going in there like I deserve to be there and I'm going to own it. And I'm even going with this thought process of meeting someone or connecting with someone or seeing if I can set something up with someone outside of set even for lunch or whatever it might be. I don't know, some sort of intention I think will help so much in that.
And the thing is, you got to go. I think that's great, that's what I think actors should have a good mindset, because it's a positive place to start.
Yeah.
But I think also you got to realize that you can go in with every intention possible, and you could go in and you could have a harried or a jerk PA who doesn't open the door for you, or as far as like letting these things happen. You could have someone who's just so focused on their job you can't lock into going, this intention has to be my reality. Some days you got to read the room and go, this is not going to happen this time, and that's okay. We had a guy on a project, and he was very, very overfamiliar on a very female-led show, and it rubbed everyone the wrong way. I don't know that he meant anything by it. I'm sure he didn't, right?
Right.
But the way he was just a little bit too, like I said, familiar, or maybe too much more than he needed to be in those moments, that we actually had to get a call about it,
Oh, wow.
And it was, they don't want to make alarms or anything, but they're like, hey, someone needs to tell this guy just to, because he had a few more days to shoot. It's like, he just needs to like dial it back a little bit. He's making some of our other actresses uncomfortable. You got to know when your intention may bump up against a wall. And so, and like I said, you don't want to be just a wallflower. That's not what you're there for. You're there to collaborate. You're there to be an artist. But you also got to realize how much you're going to be allowed to in those days, how big your role is, and how much it warrants for that kind of thing. I mean, you need to be flexible, because if you go, because as much as that was awesome for Candy, and I think she should go attack most things like that. If she had gone in with just that simple mindset, single-mindedly saying, I'm going to get something out of this, and I'm going to make this, and then it blew up in her face, it could have turned into a very negative experience for her personally.
Right.
So I think it's just a matter of being flexible, because the best actors I know are able to walk that line.
Yes.
They know when I'm here to walk on, say my line, and walk off, or walk in, have my one day and then not come back, and they know when the door's open for them to do more. Sometimes a personality shift. Sometimes it's it's again the size of the role. And I do know that there's times when you get treated differently on set. And that's because at any given point there's 20 to 100 people on that set that day, and they all gotta make sure the cogs are working. And sometimes they have patience. Sometimes they have the ability to have it all in their brain and work it out. And sometimes they don't. So sometimes people have good experience. Some people have bad. But I think as an actor, what you need to do is just kind of focus on the good and know what you can get out of the day, so you can make an impression like Candy did.
Well, I think the point that you're bringing up is so valuable, which is, and it's within your actor training, right? But it's reacting off the other person, and it's being aware of the circumstances, right? Yes, you're definitely not turning every co-star into recurring or anything like that. Like, that certainly is not, but I think it's, going in with that intention, but then also being aware, like you're saying, of the circumstances and kind of know where you fit. But I think the biggest thing, I think, for actors that do book those smaller roles is like, just know that you do belong, right? Know that, like, sometimes, yes, you're just doing your job, but don't always put yourself like in the back corner, like you don't belong there, or like you're not good enough.
Yeah. And if it wasn't important, they wouldn't be paying you a SAG scale rate, which is not a small amount of money. And especially if it was unimportant, if you look at the difference between background, even feature background, and a day performer, if you think your role is too small, it's obviously important enough that it's not the other.
Yeah.
Right? They took the time to write this role out, to budget for it, to pay pension and health, to all these things that cost money that the production would use for other things if it wasn't important. You were important enough to allocate those things in that day. And so you should go in with at least that much confidence. And look, I've heard from several actors that their role was small enough or minimized enough that they were mistaken for background. I think you should speak up for yourself. I don't think you should be necessarily treated that way. But also, it's not necessarily a bad thing either, because you don't want to look down on background people either. So just know that you shouldn't be pushed to the side. All right. You shouldn't try and make it more than it is. That happens a lot too, where actors want to make a big deal about what their role is.
Yeah.
But the other, and we try to manage expectations on that side too. But what isn't said enough is don't make too little of your role either. You can absolutely undersell your role to yourself even. Look, there are days. Look, I know actors have a certain amount of money they want to make, and there's certain standards they want to reach with their roles. But I know there's plenty of actors that have those standards that need to make their insurance, so they've taken a role that's smaller. Know why you're there. Know that you have a purpose for being there, even if you're making scale or over scale. It doesn't matter what the number is, as long as you feel valued while you're there and you're valued by the production, as you should. you know. And look, you are going to run into people who undervalue you, and it could be as much as a director, you know, and that's unfortunate.
And I think it's good to know that that probably happens everywhere. Not probably, it 100% happens everywhere.
100%. I think leads on movies get disrespected, and it's all a scale, I'm sure, but like there are days when you are not treated with enough, and sometimes it's human respect.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
And look, I think that we've gotten a lot of that out of Hollywood. It's never going to be completely gone, but I think a lot of that's out completely. There were times when I was nervous to interact with some producers and directors who were just overbearing, and I think that I have changed how I react with those people, but also I think less of that behavior is welcome anymore. You know, so on a basic human level, you should always be valued.
Yes.
But back to what you were saying, I think it helps your performance too. You want to do well in the day. If you're overthinking the size of your role or how you're being valued on the day, like it's going to affect your performance. You should go in with a certain level of confidence that of the hundreds of people submitted, of the tens of people that were auditioned, and how many called back, I'm the one that they decided that was perfect for this role. And there's a lot to be said. That's a huge win that shouldn't be overlooked.
100%. And like not only did casting move you forward, right? Then the director said yes, then the network said yes, or the producers, or so many people had to say, yes, that's the person. I like them.
Yeah. It takes one no in that chain to really muddle things up. And you are, it's very impressive when anyone books a role. I mean, we take it for granted because we book people all the time, and we book hundreds in a year. But if you sit down and actually look at it, the fact that you are on set is impressive.
Yes.
And that's a lot of times we forget to think of everything you did just to get to that point. The classes you took when you were younger, the class you're currently taking, the time you had with the coach, you know, the prep you did for your audition, everything had to go right in the time, and then the role had to be written just so for you. All these things. It's very kismet when you book, and I think that shouldn't be overshadowed.
I love that. I think everyone right now that has booked anything, you should take a moment right now to be like, pat yourself on the back. I did that. I accomplished that. Because I think as people, right, we have our goals and we're like, yes, I just want to book. I just want to book. But you know what happens every single time? All right, now I want the next one. You know, that's what they immediately go to. And so I love like just the power, and like that is a huge accomplishment. So everyone listening, just take a moment if that is you and just really give yourself props for that.
Think of your non-actor friends. People, I live outside the perimeter, and I actually have an actor 2 doors down from me. But other than that, I don't know anyone in the industry up near me really. And just think of how many of them have ever been on set, much less actually had a credited role. If you think about, it's kind of like thinking about professional athletes. We see them all the time, so they feel like they're everywhere, but it's like less than 1% of people.
Yeah.
You're doing something that most people could only ever dream of. And so it's impressive.
It is. It is. And so you, I mean, you've touched on some of the projects that you've worked on. I mean, you really have, you and Tara have and the team have really worked on some of the most popular shows in the world, the biggest movies in the world, whether it be Marvel or things on Netflix. I mean, you guys really have. How do you look for the right actor every time you're casting?
We try to approach everyone with every role with a blank slate. You know, the funny things with me, with Tara and I, we have some similar sensibilities, but it's definitely not the same. So she probably would answer this slightly different than I am because we're different people. But generally what I do is when I'm reading, I try to imagine who is in each role. Like if we start a project and some of the leads are already cast, right? I try to know who they are so I can see it. I'm kind of like playing the movie of the script in my head. And so I get an idea of what I think those roles should be. Usually in my mind, the face is murky because I don't want to get locked into one person. Then you get, tunnel vision is real in casting, and we got to keep our creatives from doing it too. But we kind of get an idea of what we want to do and who we see it, what the world looks like. And for us, we've done all kinds. We've done, Ozark, which is super gritty and real life people, to Dynasty, which is glitzy and CW. Our preference, I think, what our leanings are to the real world, to the Ozarks and the Atlantas of the world, where it feels like anyone off the street. Our goal is to make it seem that way, to seem like they're not actors, but they're someone who lives, in the world they're in. So a funny story. We were doing the show Reckless, and it was network. And at one point they were telling us, we want more real world people. And this is early on in our career, maybe a year or two in. And I said, well, buddy, do I got this? So I saw the weirdest, most charactery people all in, and we sent them all in. I was so excited, and they're like, you might want to pump the brakes. This is
not that real.
This is a soap. We're not really trying to go down that alley. But I think it was instructive because that's really what we leaned into since then. And I think, we get calls for jobs that are more like that in a lot of ways. They see the jobs that we are most notable for, and it's because that's what they lean towards. So I think that we get to play in the sandbox that we want to play in. But for us, that requires seeing a lot of people, and it requires seeing new talent all the time. I think the world's changed a lot since when I was first an agent, but what the stereotypical actor looks like has changed a lot, especially the working actor. Whereas I think if you were a certain attractiveness or height or whatever, you probably got more work 15 years ago than now, because the roles are written a little more rough around the edges. But to get that, we see as many people as possible at times, because one, that's not what every actor looks and feels like. But two, we because of what the size of the roles that we are tasked with, we are constantly trying to find new talent. We can't sit on our laurels and hire the same actors over and over again, because their status is elevating, and they don't want to take the same size roles, which is completely understandable as your career progresses. But that means we still have to keep seeing new talent. So that's been it's one of the more fun things about casting. It can be hard at times because we're relying on the agents to find new talent for it to then show to us, or we're trying to see them, through submissions or random ways that we get a hold of actors. So the new talent are sometimes hard to find, but that's, there's nothing more fun than finding someone who just fits the role perfectly and maybe doesn't have a ton of acting experience, but has enough to where I can trust to put them on set, and they just have this certain je ne sais quoi, for the role. And that's a great feeling to kind of go, man, I don't know if you ever thought that you would be having, and that's the thing about acting in this market, self-tapes and other aspects, but mainly self-tapes, to allow people who wouldn't be actors otherwise to be actors.
Yeah.
It's given them access. It's made it more democratic. More people are able to audition, so we're able to really get to who the best actor for the project is. And people who wouldn't have otherwise made a career out of acting were given access. Whereas in the past, it was a little more limited. And the end of the strike will have more streamlined guidelines for self-taping, and that's needed, I think, especially from what I've been seeing as far as what's coming out of it. But what I'm happy is it's not going to necessarily stop us from seeing as many people, because I think that's been a real big, in our market, I can't say that for every market, but for ours, it's been able to, the discovery of it all has been enormous, and it makes me happy to do it, but also I think it makes us better at our job to be able to do that. So that's, there are pluses and minuses to being seen on tape versus live. But as far as the tape, that's for us the most convenient. The biggest plus is that we're able to see so many and really see new and emerging talent on a more regular basis than if we were just seeing people, every single person in the room.
Hey, if you're an actor and you're enjoying this episode, we want to serve your acting journey in a bigger way. So we want to let you know that we offer a free class every single month. We do it on a lot of different things, but most importantly, we make sure that it is so value-packed that you have no idea how it's actually for free. But it's our gift to you to know that we are so passionate to help actors on their journey, and more specifically, help you on your journey. So you'll find a link in the description. All you gotta do is put in your email, and we will send you our next upcoming free class so you can get so much value. So do not miss out on that. Again, you'll find the link in the description. Enjoy the rest of the episode. With that thought of being able to see more people, and with self-tapes, you take somebody that maybe has a 9-to-5 job that never would have been able to, in the past, drive to New Orleans or Wilmington, or get up and move to LA. They have their 9-to-5 job, but now they can just, kind of like you're saying, get home, do the tape, and then take a vacation day if they book it. You might have some actors that are now the competition is even harder, even more ridiculous. It's not fair. Kind of what's your thoughts on that viewpoint?
I think that's probably true for the individual actor. When the numbers get bigger, it lessens everyone's like odds, I guess. If you're looking at it as more of a chance thing, and there is chance involved. I mean, you can't change your demographic, your height, weight, skin color, gender, not for a role, right? Physical things that you can't change in the moment. I think that is, you have to hope that the role is right for you in those senses. I think it drives actors nuts that I'll tell you, it's not always the best actor. As far as acting ability, it's the person who's most right for the role, which is a combination of their acting ability plus their cast ability for that role. But I think it's better for the art. It's better for commerce. It's better for the product in the end that we are able to drill down and see more actors and give more actors an opportunity. So while I understand it's not as good for the individual actor because it's now a harder road for them to hoe. It's good for everyone else. It's good for the bigger picture of things. And look, the same thing, regardless of that, right? Actors moving to Atlanta also makes it harder for the talent pool here. But at the same time, the talent pool now has better actors in it, so the talent pool is more well thought of. So you, by association, are more well thought of.
Yes.
So yes, you have more competition, but when you book, you have more credibility. So it's a push and pull. You can't look at it in a vacuum to one side.
Yes.
And if you do, I'll have dealt with several actors who they'll constantly, and they don't know this because it would drive them nuts to tell them, but they'll constantly be in like our top 5, top 3, or they're being sent to selects, and they'll go for droughts without booking, despite being in those tight groups. And they're just like, I'm just not good enough, or so-and-so keeps beating me. They take it very, very personally. And like we said earlier about the numbers, it's not that you did anything wrong. Someone was just more right. And when you book, you are more right than everybody else.
Yeah.
It's telling actors not to take it so personally is so hard because everything happens between your ears. And if I were to start singing to you right now, you would understand why I'm not a professional singer. It would be very apparent to you.
You got a microphone right there. Come on.
Nope. You want to keep listeners, not lose them. Same thing with professional athletes. You can look at someone and go, they're not a football player. And you can tell that's a physical attribute that they can't change. I think the same is true for actors, but you can't see it. You can't hear it. It's all in their brains. So when they hear they're not right for the role, or they're not good enough, or they're not everyone's Meryl Streep or Daniel Day-Lewis, by the way. There's a range of talent.
For sure. 100%.
So I'm not going to say anyone's really like a bad actor. Maybe they're not as good as someone, or maybe, they fall in a range. But when you tell them that, and it's purely between their ears, and it's nothing they can point to or change, it's a much more personal hit. It's a much more, I see it in them. They hang their ego on it much, much more. If I were to sing for this microphone, and I'm not going to, I would be embarrassed, but I'm not going to be upset that you call me a bad singer or I'm not a professional singer. I understand that fact. Because it's a more ethereal thing, actors, it's harder for them. It's harder for them to understand, and they take it much more personally. And that's the thing, is it's the amount of things that are in your control when you get cast are so small that they're really, and this is nothing that will ever take root with actors, I know this. There's nothing you could change. There's nothing you could do. You should not take it personally. It should be what we say is like, do your audition, then leave it in the room, leave it on the tape. It's so hard to do because it's a mental thing and not a physical thing, but it's the same. It's the same. Your ability has limits. Your ability to do anything has limits, and that's not just acting. But when it's all a mental exercise, it's like calling someone dumb. And maybe they're not as smart as the next person, but I'm not, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm not going to be mad if you say he's smarter than me.
Right.
But if I were to say someone's a better actor than you, that hurts your feelings a whole lot more, So it's a sticky widget. I wish there was an easy solution to it, and there's not. But there's, from our point of view, it's not a personal thing. It's not something that we imprint on those individuals or hold them more or less than. It's individual to individual casting.
I wonder I'm thinking like, well, what I was going to say is like, I know something that would help, right? But when I really look at it, I'm like, I don't know if it would help because you mentioned like the actor being in the top 5 a bunch, but just, they're so close every time, just not quite getting there. And then does that, if they knew that, oh, you're so close every time. Like, I think you think it would be better, but then you're just like, I'm just the first loser every single time, and I never can get through.
What did Ricky Bobby say? If you're not first, you're last.
Yeah.
If I told you came in second place to the past 10 roles, that should make you feel good. It should make you feel great.
Yes.
It's going to make you feel so much worse. If I had told you didn't go to producers, you probably wouldn't even get that much of an ego hit. But if you came in second over and over and over again, it's gonna weigh on you. Because you go, what more do I have? What more can I do?
Right.
And the answer is nothing.
Nothing, exactly.
It's nothing.
Yep. So with this, I think to be an actor, you need to build resilience, right? So what do you think the key is for actors to build resilience to continue to feel good in chasing this when it really is so tough?
I think that's a very personal question for most actors. You can paint with broad strokes. Have a community around you. Have people around you that are building you up and that understand you, and understand what you're doing, understand how you do it, understand the peaks and valleys you're going to go through. I like the actors that book the most still go through dry spells. I watch it happen. There's no one who books everything. I've mentioned this on a Q&A we did, and I try to do it whenever it's in a more intimate setting where it's not like a big group, but it's like, I think that not enough emphasis is put on mental health for actors. And actually, you know what? I take that back. It's not actors, it's everybody. Mm-hmm. But I work with actors in the acting world, so it's relevant to me. I think talking.
Well, I
to someone
think the
about
difference, though, I think the difference with actors and within the film and TV industry is like you're hitting rejection so much more. You're just constantly getting hit. And so I think maybe that, at least in my opinion, right, why it's different. Sure, mental health maybe could be helped everywhere, but within the film and TV industry, it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, well, if you were to look at your booking ratio or even your hit ratio, as far as like if you knew the numbers that you were going, it would be infinitesimally small. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and everyone hears about these people who, I was in LA and I was going to leave in 2 weeks, and I just happened as I left get my booking, and everyone thinks you read that story and it feels normal. It's not. I mean, Hollywood's covered with broken dreams. And
those stories just aren't written.
Exactly. You don't hear about, and so yeah, rejection's really, really big. And for someone who generally wants to be liked and doesn't deal with rejection super well, like people ask me, well, are your kids going to be actors? I go, not if they can do anything else.
Yeah, you're like, I hope not.
Because look, and if that's where their heart takes them, and they'll only be happy doing that, then of course my kids will always have my full support. But I wouldn't deal with it rejection really well. I didn't deal with it well when we first started casting. I would always put us up for projects, and mind you, I don't live, I live with my head in the clouds, so I didn't come down very, very, very long or very far. But after a while, people not responding to emails or saying, no, we've already got somebody, you don't want to deal with it. And actors deal with that 10, 100 times fold. And so if you don't have a system, in place to deal with that, and it's easy to say, do the audition and forget about it. But I know that's oversimplifying it, and that's not for everybody. And some people need to process it. Some people need to let go of a role because they were in for it for so long. And it is an actual process. Some people can just be flighty and leave it behind them. But I think whatever you do, if you aren't operating with some sort of mechanism to deal with that, that's a recipe for disaster. Yeah, I think whatever works for you, and there's 1,000 different, and this is why I think people should be talking to people. I in the past 2 years started seeing a therapist, not because I had a reason to, but I realized that if I ever did, it'd be really nice to have someone that I could go talk to, when an issue comes up, because it would be nothing worse than trying to make an appointment and make a relationship and then get into the problems that I have.
You're like, I already have the person ready.
They know me. They can deal with me. They can drill down to hopefully within an hour, because I'll talk a lot. But they can get to what needs to be done. Maybe that's not the answer for everybody either. But I think that having an outlet and not being an island, an actor as an island is probably not a great thing.
No, right? I 100% agree with you.
You're a collaborative spirit. You need to get it out. I was just talking to, I'll say her name. I was talking to Misty at Houghton the other day, and I was talking to her about some of these actors and how we both have enjoyed being off and having a little bit of downtime, and our world's so busy for the past so many years. To have some time off has been nice, as long as I don't think about the fact that I haven't worked in 6 months. It's nice to have time and alone. But I realize, just like if I don't, get some physical energy out every once in a while, I feel pent up. Actors are creative, and if they don't have an outlet for it, and she made a point. She's like, a lot of these actors are used to not working, large spells between bookings. I said, yeah, but they're in classes or they're doing something else to get this creative spirit out. I feel like you could feel backed up if you don't have a way to get it out, to release it. So I think that the actor side of the mental health question is unique in that you have all these different facets of what our job requires of you. And we haven't even mentioned the fact that a lot of times we're asking you to go to vulnerable places, intense places, emotional places in the performance. I mean, and I don't imagine that actors are pulling it out of nowhere. They're pulling it from experience. They're pulling it from imagined experience. It's kind of like when we have traumatic stuff that kids have to audition, we have to calm them down afterwards, because whether they realize it or not, they're experiencing in that little pocket moment, possibly some trauma. Either they've had the trauma or they're imagining it. And normal people don't do that. Normal people don't experience intense emotions in a small window and they go, okay, back to one, and then do it again.
Yeah.
The ability to handle that is, if you're taking that for granted and you think it's flippant, I think that it's a recipe for disaster. You could really put yourself in a vulnerable situation. And I also think that the people on our set don't recognize that enough. We just go, they're actors, they're professionals. They can handle it. They can get there. You don't know what you're asking that person to do. You don't know, it's funny. Britney Spears, go bring Britney into this. And she was talking about her early acting. She said,
call her.
Yeah, let's get her on the phone.
Yeah.
What she was saying, when she didn't get the Notebook, that it was actually a good thing for her because her acting career was kind of going places and they really liked her for it. But when she did a movie or two, she didn't call it method because she wasn't necessarily as ingrained in that methodology. But she said, I would basically go from living this one life on set to then performing at night or living another life. And I was basically being two different people.
Yeah.
And
both of those people have a certain facade.
Yeah.
That is not her,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that's the thing is no one was around her helping her navigate that, and I think, especially because the bar to entry, and I'm saying the very basic entry, not like it's easy to be an actor, but the bar to call yourself an actor can be kind of low as far as getting yourself into an acting class and getting yourself into that professional life. I don't know that anyone teaches you this lives here. This lives in this scene. This stays, and I don't even know if compartmentalizing it's the right answer, but no one teaches you how to deal with it, and that's why, and look, because you're an actor and you can tap into these places, that's why you're valuable to us. That's why I can't do it. That's why most people can't get in front of a camera and be vulnerable emotionally. But I don't know that if you aren't respecting the fact that you're doing that and that it needs to be addressed before it becomes a thing, I think it's naive. I think you need to understand that your profession, a stunt person's going to take care of their body, make sure they're not getting injured. And if they got injured, they would go to a doctor, go to an ortho or whatever. Actors, aren't doing that. They aren't doing that when they have to go to certain places. I think it could be just as dangerous.
Yeah. At Get Scene, we have this mentorship program where actors can work with a working actor one-on-one. And there's 4 main pillars that we teach in it. And one of them is balance. Because I think that's what gets missed. It's all of my happiness, everything I'm trying to go after is just booking the job. And it's like you said, so much of that actual booking is out of your hands actually. And so you have to realize that you're going to find happiness in other areas. Not only should you, but you must. You know what I mean? If your happiness comes down to 5 main things, right? And acting is one of them, it's just a small percentage, really. So if that, for some reason, isn't going exactly the way you're envisioning it right now at this moment, these other things should be filling up your cup. You should be feeling good. Yeah. You should be feeling happy. And I feel like a lot of actors give up because they're on this journey and they're just not happy. They're just not feeling good about it. And it's because they're not balanced.
Well, and I think, too, this is not a job of necessity. Some people feel like they need to act, and I understand that calling, and I hope that you're doing it because you feel called to it. But if it's not making you happy, it's a hard job. It's a hard job to be successful in. It's a hard job to maintain a certain level of comfort at times. And if you're not happy doing it, there's other things you could be doing. There's some
So true.
Well, and the thing, I know of several actors that are so far down the road that they feel like they can't get out. And they feel like, at this point, I've wasted my life if I commit failure in this and I don't.
Why is that not true, though?
Well, because life is short. Like, there's so many other things to make you happy in your life, and it's not to say that's gone forever. I'm gonna say his name wrong, but Ki Hee Kwan from Indiana Jones and Goonies, and now he's doing Loki and Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you listen to his journey, he's like, well, they weren't writing roles for me, and so I just found myself telling myself I didn't like acting anymore, and I was doing behind the scene work and stunt work and yada yada. He finally admitted to himself, no, I do miss this. But he also made a space for himself other places. So he didn't get stuck banging his head against the wall, being frustrated by things he couldn't control. They weren't writing roles for him. He couldn't control there wasn't things that warranted him going to be seen. And he went, I think he said like 20 years without acting. That's not to say you should make that your goal. But I think it's great what you said. 5 or so things that are important to you in your life. And when anyone is not going well, you can lean on the other to prop you up. And I think I know of a lot of actors that they're like, I'm all in. This is how you get here.
Right.
And again, it's because you hear the stories of someone who's living out of their car and they decided to just roll the dice and they made it and now they're super successful. But thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have done the same thing and failed. So I don't know. Look, at some point there is an all in. I think you're going to have that conversation. The big thing with Tara and I is when we teamed up, I had to make a pivotal decision. I had to decide if I was going to stay as an agent or I was going to make a leap and start doing a show with her. And it was a leap of faith, and it was the one big leap of faith that I've made professionally, and it's worked out for me. I can easily say to everyone else, hey, it worked for me. Hopefully it'll work for you. And so I always tell people, yeah, you should take the chance. But I only did it knowing I had X, Y, and Z to fall back on. I mean, there were plan Bs and Cs and Ds, and I had other things in my life going on that were keeping me whole. But you are going to have moments when it's going to, you can't just be passive. And that's the thing too. This market has changed so much. When I was an agent and early on in casting, where it was a hobby. It was a hobby, and they didn't make it a priority, and so they'd audition and wouldn't be available, or they'd only be available a certain amount of time, or there was people who really took it seriously and people who took it seriously in the moment and not really in their life. I think you do need to commit to a certain level, but I think also back to happiness. If you're not happy as an actor, if it's causing you more drama, more, sadness, more anything else that's negative, more negativity overall in your life, like, doesn't mean you got to leave the entertainment industry, but like, maybe you look at doing something else. Maybe it's not worth it. And I can fully see being on set is the highest of highs. And regardless of the size of the role, it is like an injection of adrenaline that you can live on for a little while. But that's just a moment. That's one day, So if one day of the week you're elated, and the next 6 you're kind of in the dumps because acting doesn't make you happy, well, that's not really a great ratio. It's not healthy.
No. And I think even more than that is understand within yourself like what's permeating out. Because Candy and I will talk about this. We'll see people on like social media or whatever, and they're just like complaining about the industry, and we're like, you don't have to do this. Yeah. Like, why are you just complaining? Like, either stop. Right? Or like figure out like the bright side of it, or figure out and focus on what's working instead of just complaining, and like understanding that that's like also contagious. And I think for like that person that is unhappy, that is complaining, it's like, just acknowledge that maybe you don't like it and that it is okay to stop. Like you said, it's totally okay. But then there's also the other actor that's paying attention to that, right? And I think it's important for them to be aware that you're paying attention to that. And you need to move your focus to something else. You need to move your focus away from the person that is unhappy or complaining or angry sometimes at the industry, because that can be so contagious, and that energy then kind of goes into you.
And it's you can see it in your performance. As far as I've talked to actors and they're like, yeah, I was like the fifth audition of the day and I wasn't feeling it, so I just kind of mailed it in. And I'm like, well, I could have told you that before you even told me, because I watched your audition and I could tell you weren't here for it. And back to what I was saying before about some of the negative element leaving the industry and overall in producers and directors. I think also you see way more actors that are well adjusted that aren't like, you'll still hear like Christian Bale going nuts on a set, which is a decade ago at this point. But most of them are, you want to be someone people want to work with. One of the first experiences I ever had with an actor going to meet with producers or going to LA, it was 12 years ago now or more. She went out there and they didn't even look at her resume. At that point, someone had vouched for her talent and they were familiar with her enough. They just wanted to sit down and talk to her and see if it's someone that they wanted to work with.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of time, and I've been in casting sessions where they already like the tape. They don't need to see any more performance-wise. They want to sit down and talk to you and see if you're someone they want to work with. Well, I think both of those things, and also staying on the positive side of things and optimistic side of things, it helps your performance too. Because if you think about it, if you feel like you're going to book a role or you're right for a role or you're just enjoying your day auditioning for this role, we can see that in your performance. It's an energy that comes through. But also if you're sitting down in a room or you're at a callback or you're on a Zoom and someone can feel your energy, I want to work with that person. I want to keep working with that person. The actor I mentioned earlier who, was probably going to do another movie with this director coming in town here soon. I've met the guy several times and he's just a joy to be around. And I'm like, I know why this guy keeps calling you in. You do a good job on set. You're a good actor, but also like, I want to hang out with you. You're the kind of person that I want in my orbit. That's not to say you have to fake a good attitude every single day. We have bad days. I mean, there are days you don't want to do what you have to do, and it could be the day you're on set. I mean,
but you know what? That person that you're talking about right now, I bet you any money has the balance, has the other things. They're a joy to be around because they get on set and they're not talking about how much they love acting. They're like, let me tell you about where I played golf last week, or, oh, there's this dance thing that I'm doing that I really love. Have you ever done bachata dance or, whatever it is? And they're like, this guy's cool, right? And it's because he has that balance. I bet you any money.
Yeah. And look, and this, by the way, this guy, he has a pretty good resume, but he's not the kind of guy working all the dang time. It's not like he has, I keep up with him. It's not like he's the person who's, it's easy to say, well, he's happy because he's always working. I mean, he works a good amount, but he doesn't work more than any other like average actor maybe.
Right, he's got to have other things going on.
Right, so it's not like, I don't want actors to hear this and go, well, yeah, of course the happy actors are the ones that are working all the time. That's not the case with this guy. He just has a well-oiled, well-adjusted life, And look, that could mean, I think this is a point of introspection for actors. That could mean you recede from the community more. Maybe you can't take the intensity of being around actors all the time because of what that rat race means to you. And I know actors like that who are much happier that they live a more secluded life or they live a life outside of the industry on a regular basis and then they get to experience it on their own terms. It may mean you dive more in. It may mean you go and join GPP. You go and join an acting class. You may get into the community. You make sure that you are, you're the kind of person that needs to be like elbow deep. And that's what brings you joy and will bring you balance to your experience in this industry. It could mean it's a very personal thing. And I think if you don't feel like you have balance, you should try things out and see what works for you. But it's...
How do you feel like an actor can do that though? Because I feel like some people might be thinking right now, like, no, I'm all in on the acting thing, and I literally like don't know what else to do.
I have no backup plan. This is all or nothing.
So like, how do you create that balance if you feel like maybe you don't have it, or you're a listener and you're like, I probably need that a little bit more, but I'm not exactly sure where to start.
It's funny that as you're saying that, I'm like, this feels like a life thing, maturity thing. Like I think I know a lot of young actors that are like, this is what I'm doing, going. I'm just gonna go. It's the whole, I'm moving to LA with nothing but my suitcase, and some actors still do that when they're young. I think that the older you get, you realize there's more to life. There's it's funny that just literally for Tara and I, the pandemic happened. We couldn't work, and we're very isolated. She was nowhere near me, so we couldn't see each other for forever. But we went from people who were working all the time. Our life was to work, right? We got 2 weeks off at Christmas because that's when the union said we could be off. And suddenly our priorities changed. Suddenly, like, oh, I like having a little more leisure time. I like to not wake up staring at my phone and going to bed staring at my phone. I like having my weekends to where I'm not bothered. I think that took us maturing. It took a pandemic to do it too. I think you got to find out what that is for you. It's as simple as saying, have relationships, like experience life, have hobbies, have things that are important to you that you can rely on. Don't just go, I'm an actor all the time. Like maybe that's your profession, but think about, an architect. They're an architect, 9 to 5, most days of the week, maybe sometimes after hours, sometimes the weekends, maybe, but they also have something to go home to. They have something else that's in it. That could be a family. It could be a pet. It could be keeping up with your nuclear family, whatever it is. But I don't think it's, you have to figure out what that is. I stumbled upon it. I got married and had a family, and that's something that I fall back on. I have found sports I like to do, and that's something I fall back on. I've spent way too much time during this shutdown playing video games, which is something I've had to rediscover, So it's one of those things where you got to figure out what that is for you. And I think that helps you as an actor. I've used to say this to younger actors. I'm like, you need to go live life to a certain extent. If you are just trying to be an actor and you haven't lived some of the things that you need to portray on camera, it's going to feel less genuine than if you are asked to do something you've experienced in life. So go live life. It's like when they talk to parents of kid actors, they're like, well, they need to be in acting class, but they want to play football. I'm like, they should play football. They should do clubs. They should do things that are getting them life experience so that they're actually doing it. Go on vacation. Be unavailable. It's okay to have a well-rounded life, because you could wake up one day and you wasted a lot of that time and you don't have it. But aside from that, I think life makes you a better actor. Life gives you the tools to pull from to perform on set. And I think also if you lean into that, you're going to feel more well-rounded. You're not going to feel like I'm all in on this one thing and it has to work, or I'm a failure in life. You're going to have an easier time telling yourself, I didn't book this one, that's okay, instead of I didn't book this one, I'm a failure. I think the rejection I think everything becomes easier. And I think sometimes, and I've dealt with this in my life, where if I wasn't intense on it, I wasn't doing enough. I need to be 100%. I need to be giving my all, sprinting to the finish line every single time. But I think that isn't necessarily the case. You can still be involved. You can still be giving what should be a normal amount or your all, while also pouring into the other buckets of your life. And we're way oversimplifying. This is a way more nuanced, hard conversation to have, and it's very individual. So I'm sure there's things that need to be addressed that are individual to people listening or to a larger group or specific groups, right? But I think just recognizing that, it needs
Dolly
to be,
made her way in.
but recognizing that it's a conversation you need to be having with yourself, and making sure that you're well taken care of. Look, it's my wife hates this saying because she says she wouldn't do it. But when you're on a plane and you have a small child, they always say, if the gas mask comes down, put yours on first before you handle anybody else. Because if you're trying to put it on a kid and you pass out, you've done no one any good. I think that's life. You don't need to necessarily be selfish, but make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you take care of yourself probably before you do anything else, and then let everything else kind of guide you. You'll be happier. You'll be more successful. Everything will fall into place if you just take care of yourself first. And that's actors. That's anybody. Because if you take care of everything around you and not you, you're more likely to not reach your goals. You're more likely not to see the forest for the trees, kind of thing.
Yeah. And so I feel like we've talked a lot about that balance with, the mental health of an actor. So what advice would you give an actor, like a regional actor that maybe is considering the Southeast or is already here, kind of some major, I don't know, maybe a couple of points that you think are needed for them, you think, to be successful here in the Southeast market? Beyond this balance thing that we've really focused on so much.
I think keep working on your performance, keep working on your talent, stay in class, make sure you understand the changing and evolving situation in the market. I think the thing that actors don't do enough of is make sure they're communicating with the people involved, like their agent or their managers, making sure they understand what their goals are. I talk to a lot of actors, they're like, I want to be seen by you more. I'm like, well, that's great. Does your agent know that? What's your agent doing to help that happen? Because you telling me on the side doesn't really do a lot of good. Hopefully I'll remember.
I have a quick question on this actually. So I feel like I hear this from casting directors so often, which is like, tell your agent to pitch. But and a lot of agents don't pitch. That's what I hear a lot. Tell your agent to pitch because a lot of agents don't pitch.
In defense of agents,
yeah,
I would say,
like, how does an actor know? Like, well, do I have the agent that's not pitching?
Well, it's not. It's most of them, but to their defense, most agents are looking at roles that don't need pitching, right? I don't need someone to pitch me on most of the roles I have on a breakdown because they are small enough to where I just need to see a certain amount of people, or I know who I want to see, or There's two reasons to pitch, and one is if I've missed someone for a nice big role, right, that they are right for, or there's to get me familiar with an actor. Now, most actors need to be worried about that second one. Because if they aren't being seen by us enough, then they need to tell their agent, and their agent needs to be actionable about it. Now, I don't know, like you said, I think all casting directors say this. I famously have told the very first breakdown I ever did, I remember hitting release on breakdown services and putting my phone next to the computer and just going, okay, when are the pitches going to start? Because that's what I would do. I mean, when I was an agent, if I would try and needle some people in, or maybe get some extra people seen, I would work to try and get a few extra bodies in. And no one called, no texts, no emails, no nothing. But it's something that a couple agents do. I think that they're answering talent. They're doing it for two reasons. One, they're answering talent they're asking for it. And two, there's someone they feel strongly about that's on their mind. But if you don't tell your agent, I mean, I think that actors hear this. I don't think that it always gets back to their agent. Because whenever I say it, I'm always worried that I'm going to get a bunch of texts or phone calls from the agents going, stop doing that. But they never complain to me in the end. I don't want you to go agent your agent, right? That's not fun for anybody. But you also need to be able to tell them, like, this is not work. I think a lot of times actors are hoping that their agents are doing everything, and they're doing way more than you're thinking. I still remember actors just blaming me for stuff that I was actively doing in the room next to them while they're complaining about me when I was an agent. But here's the truth. Like, the squeaky wheel gets fixed. There were actors that I used to rep I didn't really have an affinity for. Personality-wise, they didn't really jive with me. But I knew that if I didn't submit them, and they checked on it later, I always have to hear about it. So while I didn't really love all of these actors at all moments of the time, I love all actors, but these would rankle me every once in a while. Guess who was always being submitted? Those people. Because I wasn't gonna have to answer to them later because I didn't serve them as well. And while that's not great for your relationship with your agent, I think in the end, did the actor get what they wanted?
Yeah. Well, I think it's about the communication though, right? Because you're on the team, right? The agent is on your team. And so it's not like they don't want to do a good job for you, right? I feel like some actors say things like, "Oh, my agent's trying to shelf me." Like nobody's saying that, right? Like maybe you've just been overlooked, and how can you communicate with them to like encourage them, inspire them, motivate them to maybe work harder for you? This is actually an interesting story that has to do with you that I tell this story all the time, but you probably don't even know it. Years ago, so I track all of my auditions, and years ago, I noticed that my Feldstein Paris auditions had declined by 30% 3 years in a row. And so I brought that
year on year.
Yeah. 3 years in a row, they declined by 30%. That's something I can bring to my agent. I brought it to my agent. They brought it to you. And do you know what you did? Do you remember this? This is years ago. You went back because I brought real data, right? You went back and gave me notes on like 3 or 4 of my auditions over the last like 6 months and said, this is what I'm seeing in Jesse's auditions. And you actually gave me feedback on it. But I think that was because I communicated very well. It was like, hey, I'm a professional actor taking this very seriously, and I want to do the best job that I can. And my agent then can do something with that type of feeling, as opposed to, well, my friend got this audition and I didn't get it. How come, right? Like, oh my goodness, like that communication is not going to get you anywhere.
What's funny is so I used to do that, and I ended up being, I had such high hopes to give feedback. When I tell people, just ask, because no one would ask for feedback. Very, very rarely would they ask. But they did start asking regularly enough, and I said, don't ask for just feedback. Give me like 3 or 4 auditions that you want feedback on, and I'll look back and watch them, and I'll give you some larger context feedback. If you said, give me feedback on this one audition, that's not great. Feedback over several, I can give you patterns like I did for you.
Yep.
But I ended up getting about a year behind on the feedback, and I just realized it was not tenable.
Yeah.
I loved doing it because
There's too many actors that were like, Chase, give me feedback. And
I
we're
know.
like, wait a second. And then that spread like wildfire.
I love it. I used to love doing it because it gave me. And look, the hard part about it was there was times when someone's like, "Oh, go back and look at my tapes," and I would give feedback and it would be actionable. Other times I'd be like, "Oh, that's why I'm not seeing you." It really highlighted to me why I wasn't seeing them. And the other part too is, if I'd given you all those notes and you didn't actually take them, then it could really dial down your requests.
Yeah.
Because then I go, well, I told him what he was doing wrong, or I was told him what I needed more from him, and he didn't take it. So so putting a microscope on your auditions can be a great thing. It can be a bad thing too.
Yeah, I never
but
thought
I don't
of it
want
like
anyone, unless things change a lot, I'm not.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
think I'm going to give feedback like I used to. I would love to. I
No,
would
that's why I
love
said
to.
this was like years ago.
Yeah.
Years ago.
It
yeah.
made my heart feel great to do it, but I can't keep up with it anymore. But no, that's the and not all agents will give it to you, and that's their prerogative. But their breakdown doesn't. I have every single audition that's ever come through breakdown still in a database. I can pull it up whenever I want to. I can go back to 2012 when we first started. I can go back as far as I need to. And your agent should have access to all that, at least the data from when you were rep by them. I don't know how far back you could go. So you could, you should be able to ask them and say, my activity's down. Because the funny thing is, I'll have actors, and I'll see it online sometimes, like, oh, I've been blackballed by Chase, or we haven't been seen by them in so long. And I'll go back and go, and I've looked at these people and go, yeah, but you're not being submitted to us. Or when you're being submitted, you're not right. And there's context there. You can go talk to your agent. Well, they're not seeing me. Well, and look, this is where the agents will get mad at me. Maybe they aren't submitting you, or maybe they're not submitting you correctly. Or maybe I don't see you how you want to be seen. And that's a conversation we can all have. But, your activity level is, you only have so much control over it because it's a chain of command process. But I think actors are way more passive. Because it's easier to complain sometimes than it is to actually go through the process of doing it. You have actors do the opposite that are way overbearing and drive their agents nuts and get dropped because they're too much. You have people, you have agents that are too passive too at times because for whatever reason. We try to be as nice as possible and try to be, because I remember dealing with very big personalities when I was an agent at times for casting directors. So we try not to be that. But you have agents that are little worried to contact us sometimes. But I think if you're right for a role that you're not being seen for and it's brought to my attention, you could be wrong, right? I could know things about the role that you don't know. But if you're right, like, I need to know that.
Yeah.
I need that makes my job easier, makes my job better. I'm not going to know every single facet of your talent, right? Especially if you feel pigeonholed, which I think is a good thing at times because you get called in a lot. But if there's certain things that you want to be seen for or seen more in general, that's a conversation that has to get started, because if it's not, and it could be pitches, it could start, either way, it starts with a conversation with your agent, but you have to start the conversation, because I'm not going to intuit it. There's times when we were seeing someone a bunch and just for some reason we stopped. There's no reason really behind it. It's just falling off of our radar. How do you get back on the radar? You got to kind of kickstart it a little bit, so that's, and I will say this, I'm a little bit ignorant of how the current climate is with agent and actor. I've been out of it for 12 years. I don't know how actors get signed as well as I used to anymore. I don't know what's expected as far as a communication chain and how often you should be sitting down with your agent. But I think you should know that. I think you should have an idea of what your expectations should be met by your agent. And
I 100%
if they can't
agree.
meet them, then you should find an agent that can, or change your expectations, if they're unrealistic. But that's, and I think that's the reason why you hear that from a casting directors a lot, is it's not complicated to get seen.
Haha.
Yeah. But if you're not being seen, it does take outside action, because we'll just keep doing what we've been doing if it's not brought to our attention. And I don't think agents are afraid of pitching. I don't think that they're lazy. That's not it. It's just not in probably their normal workflow because, like I said, most of the roles don't require it. But, you know, if you are feeling less than served or you're not being seen by a specific, especially if you're not being seen by a specific casting office, there's action around that. There's definitely ways to get around it. And it's just a matter of saying, hey, next time I'm right for a role, big or small, make sure they see me or ask them to see me and at least get my name in front of them for a specific role so that they are thinking about me in this sense. That's going to start a conversation, whether it's a yes, which probably will be a yes. It's easier to say yes with self-tapes, especially, or a no with specific reasons. You're going to get a response. And now I have you in my brain for at least that moment, and I'll be looking out for you more in the future.
And I feel like, too, because it is all going to come back to communication, right? Making sure that as the actor, you are not demanding things, right? This is somebody that's on the team. Like this is, and you want to be like kind of a leader within that. And it's not like demanding different things. It's inspiring or motivating these actions and these things to take place.
The funny thing is, I think and it's not universal, but I've seen a lot of really successful actors handle this side of the business because they had other lives, other careers in business or working in offices, or, you know, it's amazing how someone can go from, you know, being a project manager and acting on the side, but then attacking their acting career as a project manager would, you know, and knowing how to deal with people professionally versus, I think, and we live in a world full of artists, so this isn't going to be everyone's bag, but, you know, if you treat a professional in a professional sense and have a game plan versus just kind of coming in willy-nilly, you're going to have way more success. I've seen people punch above their perceived talent level as far as bookings because they were more business savvy. It's incredible. And I've seen agents have that success level too. But book more maybe than they should based on what their, you know, perceived, you know, talent pool would be because they are working the system to its advantages, you know, and to its full extent. It's a business. I mean, you got to remember it's a business, and people, you know, you can manipulate's the wrong word, but it's the best one I can think of. You can manipulate it to your advantage if you're smart about it. And look, if you have no,
that's what we do here at Get Seen, teach you how to manipulate shit.
Yeah, just twist the system to your. Well, and look, some people don't have any business acumen, and that's fine. That's why you have an agent. That's why you have a manager if you have one. So if you don't have those things, I mean, obviously you lean into what you're good at. But yeah, I've seen it work. I've seen it work a lot, really well with business-minded people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Chase, I feel like we could continue to talk for such a long time, but we need to get to the spotlight sign off here, which is 5 questions. Otherwise, we'll be here until tomorrow.
Told you I'll talk. I told you I'll talk.
I know, and I love it. I'm down with it, and I know everyone is enjoying it. So the first question is what is something that you're incredibly grateful for today?
Industry related. I'll stick to that. It's
it doesn't have to. It could be whatever.
It feels on brand.
All right.
It's the relationships we've been able to build. I mean, even going as far as my relationship with Tara, which was created just organically as a client relationship when she was a casting associate. Being able to build those relationships and see them bear fruit, you know, from one that is now my best friend in the world to, you know, casting directors, producers, and directors who have taken a flyer on us and now have become, you know, friends and constant coworkers. That trust to continuously come back to us, but also build a relationship. You know, I never would have imagined it. You know, it was always transactional is the wrong word, but it's something like akin to that, where it felt like I did a job and then we were done and we're gone. Now it's no, there's an ecosystem. There's people checking in when we're, you know, out of work for 6 months because of a strike, and us doing the same. You know, it's really feeling a sense of community and belonging in an industry that feels so massive, but still feeling valued.
Yeah, and I think the acknowledgement in that takes time to build that, you know, because I think a lot of people want more community, right? But they're like, but I don't have it. And it's like, well, sometimes it takes time to build it, and you have to invest that time, which you have. Yeah,
for sure. And it is an investment, and it is a matter of, you know, I'm a big effort person. You know, if you show effort, I give you probably sometimes too much credit, if you ask my wife. But if
I'm
you're
just like that. I agree.
and I I chastise myself for when I don't give enough, but like it's not an overnight thing. It's just like success with an actor. It's never an overnight thing. It's building on foundations and continuing to build forward.
Yeah. What is a book, TV show, movie, or event that completely changed your life?
There's two.
Ooh.
And kind of
BOGO, let's
kind
go.
of funny. So I went to college and got a history degree. Didn't do anything entertainment wise. I took two like theater classes. One was a film class at Georgia, and but my roommate was one of my best friends at the time. We were binge watching Entourage, and he was going to go and try and be an actor. And I was like, well, I could be your agent. So I was going to be Ari Gold, and he was going to be Chase.
Yeah.
It's funny enough. If not for that, I probably don't look into interning at Houghton. Right out of college, if I don't have that. The other side of it was, as I was working for Houghton, all through college, I really only watched like SportsCenter. I wasn't keeping up with shows, and I started binge watching Lost. They were already in their 4th season, and I remember, gosh, I hope Misty's listening to this. I remember calling out of work one morning because I stayed up all night catching up to the 3rd season and into the currently airing season, and it got to be like 6 in the morning, and I was like, I can't go to work now. So I called out of work, Misty. I don't remember what I said exactly, and continued to watch. But if I hadn't gotten into that, which now I'm just connecting dots. Our first big project was Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams type thing.
Yeah.
So kind of full circle. But without those two projects, without the first project, not even in entertainment. Without the other one, I probably don't really start devouring the current slate of like big budget dramas and stuff that gave me more of a inkling for what I enjoyed to do, which is what we do now.
Wow. Did your friend get represented by Houghton?
He did. He did.
Nice.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. He's in New York now. He's not really acting anymore, but still a very good friend, and still we got him on a couple of things, and he got several things on his own as well. So, again, the kind of thing where he can hang his hat on that. He has some things that no one else is. He got killed in The Walking Dead after a couple episodes.
Always
so it's
solid.
You know what? Now more people think that's happened to more people than you think, but not on a global basis.
Yeah. That's awesome. What about your daily routine? What's something in your routine that you really cherish?
So I tend to make sure I get a workout in most days. If I don't, it's really a drag.
Dude, you had a transformation. I remember one time you just popped up on my Instagram and was like, yo, who is this guy?
Yeah.
So it shows.
I dropped to 30 to 40 pounds at one point, and luckily didn't wilt away because I'm usually a fairly big guy, so I got to keep some of that, the mass I wanted. No, I tend to work out every day, sometime mid-morning. I kind of lazily go through like a lifting routine. If I don't do something like that every day, that and my morning cup of tea. I have just plain tea just to get me going. Those two things, it's funny because I don't do them on the weekends generally, and those are my lazy days. But by the time Sunday rolls around, I'm like, just get back in the norm.
Yeah.
Just get back in routine.
And then the tea's got to come back.
Yes.
With the workout.
Yes.
All right. What's something that you're trying to improve in your life right now?
Something I'm trying to improve in my life right now. So several years ago, I got in this big self-help kick. I'm going to physical therapy to try and fix some like tendonitis, but that's not really going to count for this question. It's more of a continuing basis. I'm trying to eat better, trying to stay eating better, trying to stay with a certain activity level, try and, keep myself going forward. I turned 40 last January, and for some reason that number of things start falling apart. Like I got bum shoulder, bum everything, it feels like. But pushing through to that. So it's boring. It's just trying to take better care of myself so I joke that I want to live forever. Everyone's like, well, what if you're 120 and can barely move? I'm like, bring it. Like, let's do it. Because if I can take care of myself now, hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's
what happens.
That's the new thing right now. Candy and I are all about that longevity.
Yeah.
And she's so passionate about it. You got to watch her episode of Get Scene Unscripted. Like, that's what we kind of talked about, a lot of it. Like, she's just like, yeah, she's like, no, we can legit live to like 120. So like, we're doing it.
Yeah, well, and why not? I mean, being alive sounds way better than being dead. So, and I've joked because we did like an advanced will directive type thing a few years ago. A little morbid to bring up, I guess. But and I was like, yeah, no, just keep me on a machine. My wife's like, but what if this? I'm like, nope, I can't not plan for. It's like the studio's planning for AI. I cannot plan for what the future holds, so just don't kill me.
Yeah.
I'll be that guy with my head in a vat somewhere.
You're like, yeah, they'll figure out how to bring me back to life. I have faith.
Yeah, one day, you know what? They can't do it now. Maybe they can't do it after I die, but one day, maybe. Just keep my options open. I'm big on keeping my options open.
Yeah, all right. I like that. And so then the fifth question is, based on your life right now, what do you want the listeners to get, like one piece of advice, if you could have them get this one thing from listening? Which is impossible because we've dropped so many gems.
We have gone on a journey today. One thing, my dad has always called me the jolly optimist, and my sister used to tease me because my grandmother would call me the golden boy, and I have been guilty of just kind of going, things are just going to work out. But I think part of that is a mindset. You know, it drives my wife nuts when I'm like, oh, it's fine. Because she's a worrier.
Man, you and me both. Gosh, I know. You and me both.
But here's the thing. I'm a firm believer, and I'm not like a big like cosmic guy, but I do think like to a certain extent, if you put positive out there, you get positive out. And I ask myself a lot of times, if I've had a bad day or if someone's having a bad day, I ask like, are you having a bad day, or did one thing happen and you decided to let it ruin your day? And I've definitely given into that, and I hate when I do. But I think as much as you can decide to have a bad day, you can decide to have a good day. And this is not taking for granted, mental, not illness, mental depression, stuff like that. That's a real thing. I'm not trying to say that that's not a thing. You can't just will yourself out of everything, obviously. But I do think there's a little bit of going, okay, is it as bad as it looks? Or can I meet it with a smile, And I'm flighty. I kind of live in the moment to a certain extent, which means my memory is complete crap. But it does allow me to kind of move on to the next phase. So if you can just approach everything with as much optimism and positivity, I think you'll be met with just about as much. I don't meet many strangers, and I don't see the bad in a lot of people. I assume everyone is the hero of their own story. If you approach everyone with that, they get much more grace. You give them much more grace. You see the bright side of people. If you ask some of my friends, this is a bad thing sometimes. I see way too much good in too many people. But I'd rather that than the opposite. I'd rather meet everything as happy and positive as the day will let me. And if you can adopt even a little bit of that, I promise you it's a better way to go about your day.
100%. Mic drop there. I can't agree more.
I can't drop this mic. It's on an arm.
Yeah, that's right. But man, thanks so much. It was awesome having you here. I know everyone probably loved it. And if you did, everyone, please give us a review, comment, let us know what you thought about the episode. If you love this episode and you have a friend or someone else that would also love it, please send it their way. Chase Paris, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, man.
All right.